Hello and welcome to the SaaS Marketing Weekly podcast with me, your host Ryan, the founder of Rocket SaaS. And today we have a very special guest, Tas Bober.
Hi.
Bober for sober.
Yes. Tas like SaaS, Bober like sober.
That's it. I need to get one of those for my own name. But thank you so much for coming on to the show. One of my senior marketing people here, Jamie, I was asking him and everyone else in the office, do you know any great personalities, great marketers that could come onto the pod? And yours was the first name that came out of his mouth. He was like, you got to get Tas on. She's great. She's a landing page queen, an expert in B2B SaaS ads. So it's great to get you on the show. And today we're talking about landing pages.
Yes. And first of all, shout out to Jamie. Jamie is one of my favorite humans that I met through my LinkedIn journey and posting and all of that stuff. One of the greatest marketers. So you're very lucky to have him. And I'm lucky that that's the name that came out of his mouth when you asked him for a great personality.
Yeah, he knows a lot of people. So if you were the first name out, then kudos to you. But yeah, Jamie's a regular guest on the pod, so regular listeners will know him. But yeah, let's get into landing pages. So the people that listen to this podcast, they're either founders or they're marketers of B2B SaaS companies. They're usually trying to squeeze as many leads as possible from various ads and landing pages, obviously. So let's talk about landing pages. So let's start with the absolute basics. Like, how would you describe a landing page?
Yeah. So when I talk about landing pages, the common misconception is that people think any web page is a landing page. And I guess that technically could be the truth. If you land there from some kind of marketing asset, an ad, an email, whatever, then that's the page you landed and therefore it is a landing page. However, I define it as two separate things. So a landing page is not a web page. It is not your homepage. It is kind of this isolated web page experience. And it is created for the sole purpose of driving a campaign or single ad or single marketing asset to that page. So it's very targeted, typically very focused. You can't just find it on search. You have to be kind of part of this core audience or showing some kind of intent via search. And then you find yourself in this kind of isolated experience that's supposed to match your marketing asset or ad asset that they came in from.
So something that's been created with real intention for that particular campaign, that ad, that funnel. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so a question that I've been like flipping and flopping over the last sort of few years. I've heard some experts say different things. What is your opinion on navigation on landing pages?
Oh my gosh. Such a good question, because if you had asked me this even in January, I would have had a little bit of a different opinion. But there was an announcement in February 2025, so just a couple months ago, where Google announced that they're changing the requirements on landing pages. So before, a landing page would be, no navigation, you have a form, you have some copy, and then it's like you trapped them. So like, yeah, we've trapped the user there. They have nothing to do except convert right now, right? Like that has been what we've been taught as marketers. But Google actually got a lot of feedback from users saying, I keep going to these landing pages and they have nothing to do with the ad. I don't find what I want. And so they created this predictive model that kind of tracks user behavior. Track sounds like sketchy, but essentially they're looking at a pattern, which is, are users going to the landing page and then going back to Google and then retyping their search or trying to find an answer that they could not find on the landing page? And they're dinging landing pages based on that. So based on not a lot of navigational elements, users not finding what they need to, not matching up with the promise of the ad. So these are like very buyer-centric, buyer-focused behaviors that they're looking at. And most companies don't do a great job of that, right? Like I love to use this example. I type in accounting software and I'm taken to this pretty big company, known company's landing page. There's like 3 lines of text. The form is like 80% of the page. There's like a bunch of features that are dumped, some G2 badges, and like the end. And it has given me nothing about accounting software. Like, are you accounting software for SMB or enterprise? None of that, right? But we're already asking for that transactional piece. And so Google's going to start just dinging you, and not just, oh, you're going to have like a lower quality score or whatever, which, is a whole different topic, but they just won't even show your landing page and your ad. So they're starting to punish it quite severely. So back to the original question of nav or no nav. Initially, I would say no nav because it's probably a distraction. And then I'm going to say now that to meet Google's requirements, but also not add your entire website's navigation to the landing pages, you should probably have an anchored nav situation. So you have all these components on the landing pages, like your, the problems, the solutions, your FAQs, the testimonials. I would anchor that to the top nav. And what happens is a user comes in, they look at the top nav and they're like, oh, I want to look at the FAQs, or I want to look at the testimonials. And then they'd be able to jump down and get the information that they need fairly quickly. That also sends Google a signal that they're finding what they need, they're navigating within the page, they're getting the information before they leave. And so that's kind of the in-between answer where I'm like, don't do full site nav, don't do no nav, do anchored nav, and we'll still be compliant while still providing the user everything that they need, in order to. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. What I found with different clients with different sizes and landing pages is if it's low ticket, if you're selling something for like, I don't know, $20 a month or something, then yeah, you can get someone click on an ad, come onto a landing page, fill out the form, get the demo, get the free trial or whatever. But I find that the higher the ticket, like if you're selling something, say enterprise for $50,000, $100,000 software, people are not going to click on an ad, click on a landing page, book a demo for the first time. For those kinds of high ticket items, you need more of a demand generation approach to marketing. Like, that ad is probably not going to get a conversion straight away. You need to get them onto the site. They need to come onto the site multiple times. They need to be seeing you on their LinkedIn, their email newsletter, signing up to webinars, consuming a ton of content. And eventually, when they're ready, which may take months with long sales cycles, eventually they'll drop. So sometimes having a landing page with no nav is a bad thing because it means that people can't explore around. But that does mean a change of strategy. When I think you add the nav, it's like we're no longer fully aiming for conversions. We're aiming for more like brand awareness and people to explore. Does that resonate? You agree with that?
Yes. So I still think even with low ticket items that a user, whether it's you're targeting an individual or a buying committee within a larger kind of SaaS organization, I still think that the way buyers buy today in general, right? B2B, B2C aside, we still require multiple touch points. We still require a lot of convincing to justify a sale. I mean, I love to use this example, which is like a pair of pants. And even for pants, Old Navy has to harass me and repeatedly remind me, and I have to keep going back to it 5 or 6 times. Then I'll add it to my cart. Then it'll just sit in my cart for like 10 days. Then they send me emails like, hey, this is still in your cart. Do you want it? Hey, there's a discount, And these are like $30 pairs of pants, And so if it's going to take me that much convincing where I'm sitting here going, I don't need it. No, I have other pants. I can probably figure it out, like whatever, If they keep having to harass you for pants, imagine for something that's like a higher ACV product, even if it was like $20, $30 on a recurring monthly basis. It's like buying a pair of pants every month, and it's like you have to justify that cost. Am I going to adopt it? Am I going to do it? So I think that for both, you still have to enable the buyer and give them the justification for the purchase, not just like, oh, I got to create an emotional reaction, or I got to really agitate the pain. We love doing that in B2B. And it's kind of like those things aren't actually going to move them faster, aren't going to make them want to buy more. Is that like you're in so much pain? Because most SaaS products, to be honest, they're vitamins. They're not like the Tylenol and the ibuprofen. That's like, it's not a painkiller, it's a vitamin, right? And so in order to convince them to take these vitamins every day, you have to do a lot of convincing as to these effects because they may not feel it right away. They have to change their behavior to use it on a reoccurring basis. So I actually don't think there's that much of a difference between high ticket and low ticket outside of like maybe a sales cycle. Although my sales cycle for pants is like 90 days. So
So one thing you said to me on LinkedIn is you said that a lot of people are using the wrong lens when they're kind of analyzing their landing pages. That too many people are optimizing purely for conversions, whereas you go with a different kind of philosophy around it. Talk us through that.
Yes, my favorite part. And so I actually think that conversions are a lagging signal. And what we have been taught as marketers is that it's a leading indicator. And we need to look at, oh, okay, we had 2,000 sessions and 2% converted. We need to get it to 3%. Like, what's the difference between the people who converted and the people who didn't convert? And we need to make optimizations based on that conversion metric. The problem with that is there's so much that happens between them coming and interacting with your brand for the first time and then that conversion actually happening, right? And so, for example, if you're shopping for insurance, you're going to like kind of look around. Maybe you'll ask Reddit, maybe you'll ask some friends, hey, what do you use for insurance? What do you use? Which company do you go through? Do you go through an agent? Do you not? I'm going to do a lot of research before I ever hand over my information to an insurance agent because I know they're never going to stop contacting me, right? So buyers today, users today will do borderline illegal things before they hand over their information. They're doing a lot of research because we live in an information age. So especially now with search, with AI, all of these things, you can literally go and ask about a process and ask about the best tools and ask about a short list and your consideration set and your specific use cases. Get a lot of that information ahead of time before you ever are even on the company's radar, right? As a potential lead. So like, I almost feel like optimizing for conversions, you're kind of doing it too late in the process. You need to ask the question of, it's like this pyramid where, you know, you have the first part, which is all the engagement and the consumption that they're doing around the content related to your brand, your product, your company, the problem. And then you have the second layer, which is the actual conversion, where now they're saying, hey, I'm willing to like engage with you, right? And then the third layer, which is all the downstream metrics that come with that. So like either product sign up, a free trial, they're in the product, or demo, opportunities, pipeline, all of that stuff. But we just, someday in the land of marketing or whatever was like, vanity metrics are bad. And everyone's like, yes. And then we just completely ignored them as signals for consumption. And so the example I love to use is for one of my clients, Snagit, we put an anchored nav on the landing pages. And then we had 2,000 sessions come to the site. And through like our targeted ads, they most of the users who came in here, not most, but like 15% of them jumped straight down to the FAQ block and clicked on the fourth FAQ that was on that block. Okay. So the fourth FAQ said, hey, you're asking me to pay $60 for this lifetime license for this product. I only keep my devices for 2 years. What happens when I switch devices? Totally legitimate question, right? What happens when the license outlives my devices? And so we were like, well, you know, you just move the license key over and then you can just kickstart it back up. Okay, great. So then we moved that block. We made it its own block to handle that objection up front. And then we saw a 265% increase in purchases, not even the free trial. They were like, cool, you've answered the question. I get a lifetime license. I can carry it regardless of device. The end. Would you ever get that insight from conversion data alone?
Yeah. So were you using a tool like Hotjar to tell you how many people are clicking on that FAQ?
Yes. So through heat map data, session recordings, all of those things, you're able to determine how people are actually behaving on the site. And so you can say optimizing for consumption. I also call it like behavior-led optimization versus like, you know, outcome-led, which is what we tend to do is like, these are the people that converted. How do we change the button color so that they convert more? Like you can trick people into giving them, you know, giving you their money. And so those are some of the signals that we end up looking at. And make optimizations based on that versus just conversion data, which is lagging.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, when I hear a lot of people complain, a lot of B2B SaaS businesses complain that their just ads doesn't work for us. So there's so many facets to that. So fair enough, maybe your ads are rubbish, maybe your targeting is rubbish, but often I find that it's actually the landing page that people are being taken to after they click on the ad. There's actually the problem, and a lot of people just kind of forget about the landing page. But then you've made an interesting point about the rest of the content. So even if someone clicks on a landing page from an ad, there's a massive difference. You had 100 people that was the first time they've ever seen your brand. Then you had another 100 people that already consumed your explainer video. They've read a couple of case studies. They've been on a webinar. They've been onto your website 5 times previously. They followed the founder on LinkedIn. They've seen a bunch of YouTube videos, and then they come to the landing page, which is the bottom of the funnel. The conversion rates are going to be drastically different. So it's not always the fault of the ads or even the landing page. It's the whole funnel, the whole demand generation, and all the other content you've got to create. That landing page is just the bottom tip. I think that's certainly what I've learned about marketing over the last few years. But let's talk about something else here. So something else you said to me on LinkedIn is you suggested we build landing pages like business cases.
Yeah.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah. So a little background on that. So I was head of digital and website for a few B2B companies. A couple of them were SaaS. And what ends up happening is I have a budget, right? And so anywhere between $1 million to 10 million is what I was in charge of. And 70% of that went towards my paid programs. But then 30% of that went towards partnering with agencies, buying tools to keep the website and the digital platforms running for the teams, all of those things, right? And then I realized very quickly, or probably honestly too late in my career, that the way I actually purchase software and the way I market software are two like completely different people, right? It's like I'm having this like multiple personality disorder within the same person the minute I like switch contexts. So the defining moment for me was when my boss said, hey, we need a new translation tool for the website. The one that we're using right now sucks. And so I'm searching for a website translation tool for enterprise because I'm a larger company. I find all of this stuff. I'm overwhelmed. I go to these landing pages. They don't have a lot of the information for me. And then I text a couple of friends who are also in the space. I'm like, do you use a website translation tool? Like, who do you use? What do you use? Okay. Then I go to Reddit, and then Reddit has, oh yeah, we use this. And there's like 5 different price points for the same tool. And I'm like, okay, who's telling the truth? No one knows. And I just really am not ready to talk to the company yet, right? I'm not ready to be thrown into their sales cycle because I'm doing preliminary research. And so my boss is telling me, you need to figure out some options. And it's Monday. On Thursday, we're going to meet for a one-on-one. Let's discuss it then. So I know I have like 3 days to kind of figure out what this is. I assign some time for the task. I go do some preliminary research. And now I have this business case deck that I've had like for half of my career. And I've taken company to company and just put like my different companies' brands on it, right? And that was the deck that I always used to outline a problem, outline the objective for why we need this new tool or this new method of doing something, how much it's going to cost, what the resources are, what's the timeline, what's the implementation like, who's involved, all of these things in order to quickly condense down that information for my leadership and get sign off on as the champion of that product or the service that I'm going after. Same deck. I've used it for multiple things. So I actually had this epiphany where I was like, wow, if any company gave me this core information before I ever had to talk to them, and I would 100% have them on the list because they made my job so much easier, right? I was able to just copy paste from the landing page itself. It would make my job infinitely easier. So something that would have taken me 3 hours of research is now 45 minutes because everyone was upfront about information they already have to help me, and I would eventually talk to them, right? A lot sooner. And so I close out all the landing pages, right? Because it's Monday and I've finished my task. And on Thursday, it's one of 45 things I'm going to talk to my boss about. She finally asked about it. And I'm like, yeah, I pull up this deck that I did some preliminary research. I walk her through everything. She's like, cool, go talk to the 3 companies that you want to and get me like demo and pricing stuff and see which one's going to best fit our use case, right? And then I don't find the landing page again because I came in through a specific search or an ad. So what do? I'm like, I have these companies on here. I'm just going to go to their main website and go to get a demo, right? Direct on their site. Now the landing page doesn't get credit, right? Some marketer at this company, this poor company is going, oh, I'm just going to kill that campaign because it didn't do well. People were bouncing. But the truth is, I came to the site because I'm not going to go hunting for that landing page specifically. I'm going to go to the main site and be like, okay, I want a demo with this company because of XYZ reason. And then they're like, oh, how did you find us? I'm like, I don't know. I went through like 78 touch points. So I'm like, I don't know, Google, right? And that's how we do attribution as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what I've been banging on about on this podcast for months now. Demand generation. It's hard to attribute things. You can't just do these one-off little campaigns. Unfortunately, it's a lot of work. It's all content, pumping those ads.
Yes.
That content going, multiple touch points. And then,
it's the rising tide lifts all boats. So, how many meetings I've sat in reporting to my CMO on a monthly basis when our sales cycles are anywhere between 90 days to 2 years, depending on the size of the company. But I have to report on my performance every month. And every month I would go in and say, oh, you know what? This paid campaign's just not doing really well. Our direct hand raisers are up for some reason. I don't know. There must be some PR stuff or some organic stuff. Anyway, but these landed back to these campaigns. How many times have we done that? We do it all the time because we don't have an answer. So we ignore it as something that was impacted by all the marketing efforts that we've put forth. So I decided to test the theory of, I wonder if we set landing pages up like a business case, whether that would actually help improve things. And I don't care about conversions, right? So most companies will come to me like, I have a 3% conversion rate. I would love to get it to like a 4. And I'm like, listen, I got some bad news for you. I'm probably going to lower your conversion rate, but there's going to be other things that will matter to you more, like the quality of meetings, the density of ICP coming to the page, the information we give the buyer so that your deals go a lot faster, right? Deal velocity, quality pipeline, quality of revenue. And those things, I mean, I'm long gone before they see the fruition of that work, but that is literally how B2B works because we have sales cycles that are long. And yet we as marketers are supposed to report on stuff every month. It just doesn't make sense to me.
So yeah, even my agency, like a couple of years ago, we had a bit of an issue with churn. Like clients wouldn't stay with us like that long because we would have to directly attribute to the LinkedIn ads we were running or this landing page that we were doing or this particular campaign. And often in B2B, you just can't recognize it like that. But then I switched to like a demand generation model and I educate my clients. I'm like, all we care about is you getting more revenue. Like it doesn't matter where the business comes from. I'm sure you don't particularly care either. So let's all pull together, leadership, us doing your marketing, your sales team as well. And then the goal for all of us should be to get overall more demos booked and obviously more sales as well, ultimately. And then that was just like a seismic shift for us in terms of churn, when we're no longer judging us specifically on these individual campaigns or conversion rates on landing pages, because you're right, we would often have quite negative reports to send to clients, but oh, sorry, this LinkedIn ad campaign's only got you 2 demos this month and this landing page is not done particularly well. But hang on a minute, in your HubSpot, you're having your best quarter ever.
Yeah.
And then eventually I'd learn about, oh, that's actually partly because of us and what we're doing and all the content we're creating and those great case studies and the videos and the LinkedIn organic content that's going out there, the newsletters, the webinars, the podcasts that we've been helping you do. All of that together is having a net positive effect. So and it makes it hard to know like what campaigns are actually working, what campaigns are not working. So that's where your vanity metrics, as you call it, can give you an indication in terms of, are these ads getting clicks? Is this people spending a lot of time on this page? So yeah, it's not always as black and white.
And I'm not like so super concerned about like, I mean, I think when we call it vanity metrics, people are automatically turning their brains off. Like, I'm not gonna listen to this. So I talk to them, and I most people who come to me usually are inbound and they're kind of bought into the concept because of a lot of the education. But sometimes I do have to do the educating up front, or during the call. And so I don't always position it as vanity metrics because they're going to roll their eyes and be like, oh, this person's only going to start claiming things on like visits and whatever. I'm like, no. We're looking at specific metrics that are going to be consumption signals prior to that conversion ever happening. And so that's how I talk about it, is like leading like positive or negative, right, signals of consumption prior to the conversion. So sometimes it's just that reframe that helps people understand, okay, are we moving in the right direction? And that's the biggest thing. So when I tested out the business case thing and I was like, let's see, because this is the longest landing page of my freaking life. And it goes against all best practices that we've been taught by every HubSpot article. But then we see things like with Snagit, their average conversions on most of their pages were like 3 point something. The landing page I did for them was 1.65, but we had the highest number of purchases by a mile. Like none of their other ones had the purchase metric. So I don't give a shit about conversions. I mean, that's ultimately what it is because it's meaningless if there's stuff that's around it that we're ignoring. And then another client, they had like their main primary call to action was just booking a meeting with their SDR. And so they were at a 0.13% conversion rate on their landing page, which is like a little bit sad. But anyway, the meeting's booked. And so we revamped that landing page, more voice of the customer, more conversational, less like buzzwordy. So more like me talking to Ryan, right? Not like B2B loves to like revolutionize and disrupt your tech stack, whatever. So we did that. We changed it and it went from like 0.13% to 3.73%. Meetings booked, not some crappy conversion metric, but actually meetings that were booked. And then I worked with this client last year, and that's what we saw within the first 3 months. And, I only do 3-month engagements. So then I, moved on with my life. She did too. She messaged me last week and she did a whole case study for me. And she said she had the highest pipeline generation quarter in the company history, just using these same principles across her marketing assets. So it's like, that's how it works though, because we have long sales cycles. The work that you do now is going to show up in 2027. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true. I'm with you. So going back to your deck that you put together for how you describe like business cases, you listed a few things like problem, challenge, benefits. So is that kind of how you would approach the structure of a landing page? Like off the top of your head, like typically kind of what sections of a landing page you like to see in which order?
Yes. Well, yeah. And the order matters less too, thanks to anchored navs that help people go to whatever spot they want to. But logically, I like to have it tell a story. So obviously the hero, in the hero, you can lead with the problem, capability, it just really depends on the product. So that one is kind of up for grabs. But one is making sure that the product category is abundantly clear and not the product category that you call it, because most companies will be like, we are the revenue generating platform. And you're like, okay, you're a video tool and that's what people are calling you. Everybody generates revenue, right? So we gotta be more specific and see what people are actually calling you, what they would call you. So their product category, who you're for. So a video tool for enterprise is going to be different than a video tool for a LinkedIn creator, for example, right? So we have to identify and qualify within that product category of who you are. And what that helps us with is like when we're putting together the business case, the first thing is, we are looking for a video tool for my company, and here's why, right? So you move on to the next section, which is the problem block. What are the issues that we're having right now? And so we're going to say in this problem block, I'm going to tell people, my stakeholders, hey, so we discovered these 3 issues. The video translation or the website translation tool, it's like buggy. It's too small for how big we are. It's really clunky. We still need a lot of human intervention. It doesn't have a log of like all the banks of words that we would reuse and patterns. So I'm going to put that in the deck, but you can also put that on the landing pages, right? Most video tools are clunky. They're not big enough for our needs and the number of people that we have on the team. So those are the things you kind of outline. So it's not pain agitation. It's kind of a checkbox for the user to say, oh, I'm in the right place. These are also my problems, right? You want them to self-qualify themselves, right? Over you qualifying them. They have to qualify you as the tool that's right for them. So you go through the problem block and then you go into, well, how do we solve all of these problems? So what SaaS loves to do is we feature dump. So it's like getting catcalled. You walk by what if you walked by a shoe store and they're like, high heels, right? Leather soles. You'd be like, okay, dude, like chill out, right? But we do that on these landing pages all the time, right? AI enabled, 30-day implementation, right? We love to scream that stuff and people are like, okay, integrations, right? So how can you talk about those problems right? And talk about how your solution solves those problems. So you can talk about the features in context of how they solve that problem. So I do a matching kind of game. So it's like you have X problem, which is like most are clunky and they're small. Okay, we have, you know, a 30-person engineering team. We have this like high strung, these are these big companies that use us. We have all of these things that would suit, you know, a scaling company or whatever that is, right? So matching.
Yeah, I always say that people emotionally connect with problems much more than your features. So if I'm scrolling down a landing page and I can see, if I'm like a HR person and I can see, are you spending 10 hours per employee onboarding? Or when an employee leaves the company, is it just an eye-rolling, painful admin experience for you to go through? And if you've got those problems and you read that on a landing page, you start nodding your head going, yep, that's me.
That's me.
If you flipped it and you just read features of a software telling you that it does the solution, you don't really connect in the same way, because that your feature isn't what's on my mind.
Yes.
The problem's what's on my mind. So you need to get me nodding my head on that landing page, and then I'm invested when I'm reading about the features.
Yes.
So that's why starting with problems is key, rather than just going straight into us.
Yes, exactly. And so as you're walking through those solutions, then you're going to ask the question of like, well, is this a credible company or tool? Like you might have been exposed to this website translation tool over the years, but your boss may not have been. The guy at InfoSec may not have been. He doesn't give a shit about brand. So you have to sit there and go, okay, actually really, you know, you may not have heard of this company, but, you know, these two peers of mine use it. They've obviously worked with big brands like, you know, KFC or whatever, like, or brands like ours, right? Showing them specific proof that's related to our industry. So you're almost convincing them like, hey, this is a legitimate company. And we have to do that a lot with internal stakeholders. So we're talking about the proof points. And then finally, there's going to be questions that are going to come up. Obviously, the most notable is, how much does it cost? Even a starting range, so that I can tell my boss, because that's the number one question. How much is it going to cost me? And guess what? The number one thing we hide in B2B is we gatekeep the heck out of pricing, right? So even a starting range helps disqualify people, because if you're like, it's a $35,000 product, great. If my budget is $50,000, that's great. I have room to customize and configure and buy seats and do all of those things. If the top end of my budget is $35,000, you don't want that person anyway as a customer, right? So just put a starting range out. Even if your pricing is complex, one of my clients, that's what they did, starting at $35K. Will vary based on the complexity of the business. The end. You don't have to put all your pricing on there. It's not all or nothing. And then the FAQ section, which is so important. This is where you start to put in, say you have like 6 or 7 kind of value props or product stories. Here's where you can prioritize them, put the top 3 earlier in the page, put the other ones down in the bottom, and see if people are interacting with those FAQs, and then you can bring those product stories kind of ahead. So those are kind of the key components. Don't have to add your stupid guide of state of video tools 2025. No one cares, right? Like those resources and stuff that happen in the bottom, like people love to give them a bunch of exit points, and it's like, not for these landing pages. They're here because they looked for a specific problem or they were interested in a problem. Don't distract them with some other stuff right now. And they'll come back, you know? So that's kind of the things that we're looking at is if those are the components I had, it would make my job much easier.
Nice. And then are you finishing typically on a form or a Calendly embed?
Yes. Oh yeah, I forgot the most important block, which is the form is always in the bottom of the page, which like scares a lot of, you know, users because we're so used to like put it above the fold so they see it. Trust me, they know that there's a form on the page. Okay. Nobody's under any illusions that there's not a CTA on the page. There is. I usually put the form in the bottom, and I always use the analogy of like, you're going to date before you marry. Right? So they are dating you. They're evaluating whether you're a right fit for them. You get to the bottom and they're like, hey, if you want to talk to us, here's what you can expect if you do give me your information. And, we'll contact you within 24 hours. We'll have a 30-minute kind of use case discovery meeting, and then we'll do a 60-minute meeting with a solutions engineer and walk through a demo of your specific use case. Even just setting up those examples or setting up the context of how you're going to use that information, how you're going to respect their time, immediately disarms them and is giving them a reason to more than likely engage with you, because they're like, okay, cool. They're respecting my time. They're telling me what's in it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I do find that with book a demo pages or book a demo forms is it just says book a demo and then there's a form.
A form. And then, you know what they love to do? The statistics. 250% ROI. Your tool, like relax.
Write that in there, yeah. But the best book a demo pages or section of landing pages, how long is this demo going to last? What are the 3 to 5 things I'm going to learn? Yeah. I'd like to see a nice, smiley, friendly photo of the person that is going to be doing the demo. That makes me feel more positive. Okay, I like the look of this person. Just emotionally gets me there.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, a bit of social proof as well doesn't hurt. Not just a ROI stat, but final bit of social proof as to how your product has helped someone else solve the problem. That sort of content's around the form.
Yeah, someone else like me too. You don't want just like, and the testimonials that are like the one line, like, wow, I had such a great experience with this company. So I always tell people, I'm like, they're going to trust stuff coming from other people more than you, especially their peers. So you want to talk about, so if you have a page that's about, you're like a 6 product suite. What we love to do is put the same 3 testimonials every page on the website. But if you have a page that's specific to a product, you want testimonials that talk about that specific product. If you have a specific vertical, you want somebody in that vertical talking about how your product helped them. And so that's the kind of big miss, is that relevancy, and every single component of the landing page needs to be relevant to the intent, right, that you're setting on this page.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you've clearly proven yourself as a landing page expert. Or did I call you a landing page queen earlier? I can't remember.
I like queen better than expert.
Okay, that's the landing page queen. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the pod. If anyone wants to learn more about you, work with you and your landing page expertise, how would they do that? Where would they go?
Find me on LinkedIn, TAS, and last name Bober, BOBER. I also have a landing page resource hub, which is basically all the content I've ever put out on landing pages or websites or even running a consultancy. But I've organized all of this in kind of a one place where you can kind of go and filter, look at categories and stuff. It's completely free. It's on my profile. You should find it, the landing page resource hub. Go in there, DIY some stuff, go forth and conquer without ever giving me a single dollar.
Nice. Love it. Well, I didn't even know you had that. So I'm going to download that in about 2 minutes. So I'm going to share it with my team on my Slack channel. And really look forward to getting stuck into that. So thank you so much. And thanks for coming into the pod. And hopefully we'll have you back soon. I'm sure the world of landing pages will change a lot in the next few months or a year's time. And you'll come back to me and tell me something completely different. But thank you so much for your time, and see you soon.
Thank you so much.